Early estimates range between $200 and $750 million, but multiple analysts are now saying billions are more likely the case. Even before full rollout, Ottawa had already spent tens of billions of dollars. In fact, 67 to maybe $100 million without collecting significant firearms. And critics consistently frame it as costly and ineffective in mainstream reporting. To talk more about this, Bradie Whetham, Jim Lang, thanks so much for your time, guys. Is the gun buyback program failing here in Canada?
I think it's one of the most abject failures of a government program we've seen in the last decade. But then it does nothing to address the core of the problem. The illegal handguns being smuggled into major Canadian cities and used in crimes on a regular basis. I mean, they were so stubborn about this, gentlemen. And even though all the police chiefs and all the experts and all the police services said, we don't want any part of this, they refused to adjust their plan in any way.
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, some of the stats that I saw on this kind of blew my mind. And I know, you know, we can take this conversation a couple of ways. One, that the program was super costly and didn't really do anything too effective. But the other thing is they've only collected about 32,000 guns, which works out to about $25,000 per gun bought back. I guess if you add in the cost of everything so far, that is interesting. And then to top it off, Bradie, you're from a family that has been hunters and gun owners for generations.
Yeah, I'm currently not a registered firearm holder, but I grew up in a household that was. So the very first job I ever even really had as a kid was loading shotgun shells for my father in our basement. And one of the things that I learned very early on, my father had a special firearms license. He was also a licensed dealer. I learned respect for firearms. I learned how to be around them, how to have trigger locks on them, clean them every time that you're done with them, actual gun safety and gun protocols, proper ones. And these are the people that we're offering money to bring us their guns. These are already the cordial people.
Jim, what's your take on that?
Well, I tell you, I'm glad Bradie brought this up because we go to Northern Ontario for a stretch every summer, and the people that live there year round hunt deer and moose, and that meat that they hunt feeds them through the winter. And I know in rural Newfoundland and the Maritimes, out west, whether it's elk and caribou, the meat that these people hunt on a regular basis, and they go through all the licensing, as Bradie mentioned, and have all the documentation, and they get the tags, and they're very responsible conservationists about this. That the meat from that deer and that moose and the elk, whenever they hunt, and geese and duck, that's in their freezer through the winter and feeding their family.
On that point, so our Canadian Thanksgiving actually lines up with moose season, the beginning of moose season.
Yes.
And I've never had my father around for Thanksgiving ever. But when he came back home, him and his hunting team, they would usually have, if they were lucky, had one moose, if not two. And we would be eating that meat until April.
Yeah. Well, look, with the price of food now, I mean, I was just at Costco last week, and they had strip loin steaks, but in a big package that you cut yourself, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Most people could never afford that. But the responsible hunters who follow all the rules and all the safety guidelines, who do get the moose and deer, that's saving their family thousands of dollars every winter.
Saving their family thousands of dollars. And like I said, I don't know if this is really the aim that we should have been taking to clean up the crime, is to go after the traditional hunters and trappers that are out there that do this properly, have everything registered properly, even to the point where they're kept with trigger locks inside of a gun safe inside of their home. Their bullets are kept in other safes. Like, these are regulations. And the government here in Canada has been very, for lack of better words, they've been very anal with how they've laid these laws out. And thank goodness they were, because it created a very safe environment for gun owners. The guns that we're supposed to be going after with this program, you'd think, would be the illegal ones, the ones without serial numbers, the ones that don't have registrations. Why are we not spending billions of dollars trying to solve that?
And that's what the police chiefs were begging the government to change their focus. The CBC did an in-depth study about the amount of illegal guns in major cities in Canada. 88% of the guns seized by Toronto police in 2024 were traced illegally to the United States. In Peel region, it's 90%, and that's Brampton, Mississauga, a huge area, Western Toronto. So you have this massive amount of gun crime being perpetrated by criminals with guns smuggled illegally from the U.S., and the police chiefs are begging the federal government, strengthen the laws, strengthen the border, start catching the guns, and if you're caught with it, do serious jail time.
Yeah, I'm not sure that taking guns away from recreational users and responsible people was really the mission. In fact, 12,000 of the firearms were collected from businesses before the individual rollout. By the way, this, guys, has been going on since May 2020 when it was first announced. Here we are 6 years later, potentially $1 billion or more into it, and 32,000 guns returned from people who are probably and most likely would never use these weapons in an undue manner. So you're right. We missed the boat on who really this gun back. And I'm not sure what the theory was, but really what we need, I think, is more of what we see in the US, which is an amnesty program. But even so much to say, I can't believe as a Canadian that I'm even saying this. Are we headed, as we have a military increase coming in this country, hundreds of thousands of people potentially joining our military, trained properly with firearms, responsible individuals, maybe carrying weapons themselves? Are we maybe missing the point on this, and we should be creating laws like we see in many of the states where people are allowed to carry and are licensed to do so?
Before we get into that, I just want to tail end the final little bit of information I have for the licensed gun owners. So we're not taking into consideration at all about collectors. There's gun collectors out there. My father was a gun collector. He had championship Berettas that had never been shot. He had gold Henry repeaters and things like that. So there's collecting markets. When you pay over $10,000 to $20,000 for a collector's gun, and then the government offers a program to buy it back at $5,000 to $10,000, it's not a very good investment. So this is another reason why we're seeing low buybacks, because who in their right mind would ever want to take something worth that amount of money, whether it's a gun or not, and sell it to do what? And it's not cleaning up any of the crime.
And farmers, we have to remember, gentlemen, that the livestock is basically the entire financial wherewithal of many farmers in Canada. So their dairy cow, their beef cattle, their sheep, whatever they're raising, unfortunately, there is coyotes and wolves and predators out there. And I know in my wife's family, they have some farmers, and they have to have 22 bolt action rifles and shotguns to keep those predators away from the herd. Because if they lose their herd, that's their life. That's their job.
Once again, they got 32,000 guns back. Apparently, people aren't interested in handing them back on that front. And I would imagine not too many collectors handed back a weapon.
They're probably not going to. And I think there's a few solutions even inside. Let's say we're not going to go after the illegal guns, but we want to get some of these special firearms. I think maybe we take a step back on special firearms licenses. They haven't really released those to the public for a very long time. You had to be grandfathered in. But there's people that are in Canada that are collectors or whatever it is that have these special firearms license that own RPGs that go out to the tank ranges, and yes, they're allowed to. They should be allowed to. But if we're trying to clean up some of these guns that could eventually get into the hands of the illegal market, maybe go after the special firearms first. I think there's a good chance that you're going to be able to get more.
And that's a good point, Bradie. And Mike, just to what you said about the expanding military and the militia, the military, I know from growing up with my father, have very strict rules about the armory. Every base in Canada has a special armory with a senior NCO who's the range officer who handles and so guns are stored in the base. You can't take home. You could be in whatever member of the service, Army, Navy, Air Force, and use a gun at work, but it stays there on the base with control and care and safety issues. And when needed, you go to the base, get your uniform on, and you get your kit, your weapon.
My point to that end was that we are going to have a lot of well-trained people with weapons in this country, many, many more than we've had in the history of my life anyway. And on that front, it does beg the question, look, the violent crime weapons were not retrieved, obviously.
No.
That means there's still a predator danger out there. There's property danger out there. people are looking at the castle law now seriously because of the amount of home invasions that have occurred. And I wonder how long it's going to be before we start making the trip across the line for Canadians and start looking at certain ways to arm people. I certainly am not an armed individual. It's not something I've considered. I don't hunt. The notion of it will frighten me, I think, to some degree. However, in many states, it is the average day for an American.
Yes.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I've been to licensed gun ranges in Canada and the U.S. and with gun officers and safety officers, and followed all the procedures to shoot at sandbags and targets and stuff like that. And I will say this: you'll have a healthy respect for a gun when you actually fire a gun with not a blank but a real live ammunition in it, and it's scary. And I don't own a gun. I have no desire to own a gun. But every day in the news, from Surrey, BC, to Halifax, to Montreal, to the suburbs of Toronto, really well-to-do middle-class suburbs, you're seeing video of people shooting up homes in intimidation. Those aren't guns they're buying at Cabela's.
Well, I grew up on a range at a sportsman's club I was there for 20 years. One of the very first things that I did was set up, so we'd have a lot of the Americans come up for rifle competitions, and I'd run out and set up the targets at 50 meters, 100, 150, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd also load skeet for the shotgun, right? For shotgun shooters on the other side of the range. And I grew up around firearms, and I also realize, and I think anybody who probably grows up around firearms that is normally wired understands what these things are. They're extremely dangerous.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, shooting, as you talk about it, is an Olympic sport.
It is.
Target shooting is an Olympic sport. And so, and there's the biathlon where you're cross-country skiing and then shooting at a target with a 22. So
I met a lot of those guys growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny. I recently met the son of a I guess, what is it? A relay shooter.
Yeah. Relay.
And he said to his kids, if you want to make sure that you stay safe, just stand still, because I can't shoot at you unless we're on the move. So he would see very, very special skill.
It's pretty funny.
So having said that, really what happened here, I guess, guys, is the gun buyback funding diverted funding from where it's really needed, on the border at smuggling efforts, in the streets, retrieving violent, organized crime weaponry.
Can I paint out an example, and you guys tell me if this just sounds crazy or not? I'm going to come up with an idea for the government. You tell me if I'm completely out to lunch, but I think this may work. It seems to be, in my head, makes more sense than something like this. So what we do is we open up a federal gun buyback program, but for illegal guns. Well, let's say you bring in a registered gun, we'll buy it too. But we want the illegal guns. We don't care if there's a serial number on it. We don't care if it's attached to a crime. Bring these things in. We'll do that research once we get them. But at full immunity, which means I don't care how it got here.
I think
here's your paycheck. And I think you're going to turn a bunch of criminals into businessmen and put them in an environment where it's actually real for the first time, where they're getting a government paycheck. And it hopefully that not only changes with guns on the street, but hopefully you motivate some people to actually do something different for a living. Because if they can make more money off of exchanging that gun than selling that gun or using that gun for a crime, then why wouldn't they just turn in that gun?
I think it's a fabulous idea. No, it's not crazy. My only caveat is some of these hardened criminals in major Canadian cities are smuggling, say, a Glock or like a really dangerous handgun with a high capacity, and they're renting it out. So it's being rented for hundreds of dollars an hour in the morning. It's used in the execution of crime. It's brought back. It could be rented out 2 and 3 times. Now, I think for maybe someone who's a fringe criminal, who's maybe not like a hardcore, that is a fabulous plan. Bradie, they have to come up with something.
Something has to be done.
Something has to be done, and especially at the judicial level, to give the judges to hand out pretty stiff sentences for people convicted of smuggling.
And
they have to, yeah.
I'll straw man my own point here by saying, well, maybe we shouldn't do that because all you're doing is funding more criminal organizations. What says that they don't take all of this money that they've made and do something completely more dangerous, like invest in fentanyl or whatever it is? I get that argument, and I'm for that argument. But it sounds like that argument still is a lot better than what we laid out here since 2020.
Amnesty in the States brought in a lot of guns from families, mothers, kids, family members who knew illegal guns were in the home.
Right.
Got them out of the home. It did not bring a lot of organized crime weaponry out of the woodwork. What it did was it made homes somewhat safer. But what it did do was have a huge effect on how many people actually participated. I would be curious to know what the average turn-in was. I think that if you were going to hand in guns, it was your dad's or your grandfather's. They might be old weapons. They might not even be serviceable at this point. I think some people cashed in on weapons that were probably never going to be used again anyway.
I would assume that's probably a majority of the number.
That's a great point, Mike, that especially with the aging population, for a lot of people, especially if you and I of our age group, an uncle, a loved one passes away and you're doing the clear out of their residence. And you're like, oh, I didn't know Grandpa or Uncle Joe had a shotgun or a rifle. So then you contact your local RCMP, OPP police force, and they're trained. Like, hey, I'm helping my blah, blah, blah. And they're like, hey, that's all good. They specialize in that. They know how to handle weapons and store it safely and dispose of it. And you're right. I mean, a lot of the older families, the older people who came over and were hunting to feed themselves may just have something still in the garage or in the attic that they've had decades and it was forgotten about.
Okay, amnesty and the gun buyback doesn't work. We're not stopping the guns at the border and crime begins to grow. I promise you, my estimation is it's not long before people are starting to go in the opposite direction. I would imagine there's some provinces, some cities that will start to issue training and self-protection and gun training that will allow for a license for carry.
Well, and to that end, Mike, I'm glad you brought that up. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, because everyone's got a Ring camera, 3 individuals tried a home invasion in a nice neighborhood in Vaughan. And while they were kicking, someone who had a legally owned firearm took it out of their legal weapons locker and their ammo and shot at the people breaking in. And they ran away and they injured one of the perpetrators. And when the police investigated, they saw that it was a legal weapon, licensed weapon, in a licensed locker and they used it to defend their house. And there was no charges to the homeowner.
Interesting. I kind of see the trend heading that way, guys. I know that's odd for Canadians. It certainly feels weird coming out of my mouth. It's something that I've reviled about the United States my entire life. Oh, they're all but there comes a point where a certain amount of respect and reduction in crime has been noted in states that otherwise would have problems. When people are armed, there seems to be a different level of respect among society.
I literally have 2 novels full of paperwork in front of me that states the case.
Wow.
It states the case of.
You read all this?
Yes, I did, and it is very nicely put together by our team. Thank you for doing that. And one of the things that is reflected through all of this is that when you have open carry or conceal and carry, it definitely does make a huge difference on decreasing crime. Now, whether we bring that into Canada, then it affects it here, I don't know. But in the States, it seems to be where there's concealed carry has the lowest amount of crime.
All I know is 25, 30 years ago, when someone used a gun in a crime, it always seemed to be in a gritty area of the urban city, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto. The suburbs was always seen as a safe haven in Canada. I mean, and now on a weekly basis, we're seeing people shooting up a house in nice suburbs across Canada, home invasions.
Is repeatedly at the same home.
Yes.
Home. Yes. Yeah.
And that just, gentlemen, that just simply never existed in this country, not that long ago. And I can see people going to Cabela's or whatnot and getting a legal shotgun, even a double barrel shotgun that's easy to load and get ready. So in case they see someone on the Ring camera trying to kick the door in, they're ready to protect their family.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, Jim? I wish that the future boyfriends of your daughters hear you say that quote exactly. It's easy to load up a double barrel shotgun. Guys, the buyback program, we're about $1 billion in. We got 32,000 weapons back from people who are probably nonviolent citizens. And I think that we can all agree it's not a happening thing.
Can I ask for a solution from each of you guys before we roll it out? I would like to know what the solution is. Like, if we had to make a decision right this second, I've already given my case of what I think should be done. I think we should be offering a full immunity buyback program. Get these illegal guns off the streets and bring them back.
My solution is bring all the police chiefs in. They deal with this every day with their team, the men and women in all these major cities in Canada. Look, we're trying to do something to stop this never-ending flow of illegal guns from the United States. And all the stats are showing it across country. 85, 90, 95% of guns and crimes in major cities in Canada are illegal. This is what we want to do. What are your suggestions to help us with the Crown attorneys and the judicial department in this country, so then we can set laws and punishment and fines and whatnot, so it's so prohibitive that if you're caught smuggling a gun in, you won't do it again?
Mike?
Build jails. We need bail reform. We need strong laws that people have to really abide by, and we enforce that put them behind bars for a long, long time if they are caught with a gun. We won't do that. So I don't want to arm up, but I will.
Well, and I leave that question to our audience as well. If you'd like to leave a comment below, let us know what you think on it. But yeah, I
unfortunately, farmers.
Mike, I think.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Bradie. No,
I don't want to be in a position where I see us all carrying guns. I think I agree with Mike. I don't know if that's where we want to be as Canadians, but it sounds like we're getting closer to the point where we might have to.
But the economic reality, a lot of people in rural Canada, in the far north, in small towns across the country, as you mentioned, Bradie, deer season, moose season, elk season is an important part of the survival of their family, both for food and for the economy. They simply can't afford to go to their local superstore, Sobeys, and buy all their meat there because it's too expensive. And then being a responsible hunter, a conservationist, and a gun owner, and getting that meat and filling their freezer has been something they've been doing for generations.
And anybody who's never been to Northern Ontario or northern parts of Canada, it doesn't matter what province you're in, try and take something to the dump without a gun.
Oh, no.
Try and take something to the dump.
You must avoid the bears.
Eventually, one of those guys is going to get you. Now, mind you, dump bears are usually dumb. They're living off of garbage, so they're not usually as aggressive as a bear out in the forest.
I don't think we want to label bears, do we?
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, there's portions of this country where you kind of need a firearm, guys. Get away from it.
As a matter of fact, I had a family member who was doing a geological research project in northern Saskatchewan, above, like past the cell phone line, where like they had no cell service near the border of the Yukon. And they had a couple of individuals around their camp because they were looking to see, is this a good place for uranium or rare earth minerals, because of the wolf packs up there. And they had to have it to protect them because the wolf packs will come in and grab food or grab you.
They'll follow you home if you're walking around in the middle of the night.
You know, I hate to say it this way, but this could be a double bang solution. We could have a double barrel solution here, Jim. If we armed up as a nation and created our own industry of building firearms, we could put Canadians back to work. We could arm them.
It takes a lot of experience and practice to use a gun properly and hit what you're aiming at. And I don't trust the average Canadian with a gun in their hand to hit what they're aiming at and not hit someone they're not supposed to. I want the military to have guns, the police to have guns. If you're a responsible gun owner, go and practice so you know how to use it properly. But, you see these stories about someone that has in the States, they have a small handgun in the console of their car.
They shoot the Chihuahua by accident?
Yeah, right. I mean, no, you're all joking aside. Kids get shot by accident. Innocent people get hit. Yeah. But the bullet doesn't know where it's going. It's not going to turn away when it realizes it's an innocent person.
My father used to label 3 days of the week was Wednesdays, skeet, Thursdays, indoor range, Sundays, rifle range.
No,
Right,
it is
so
what
obviously
it's like
an
for people, yeah.
Yeah, and an experienced, responsible gun owner who knew what they were doing. It's like anything. I mean, you're just going to say, "I'm going to grab a fishing rod. I haven't touched it in 10 years. I didn't catch anything." You think? You know,
Yeah, right.
experienced anglers do it on a regular basis or whatever it is.
Right. Okay, guys. Well, listen, I think that we've offered some solutions. None of them great, but at least we understand better where we're at. That, frankly, the gun buyback program
Look, we
appears to have been.
we have a great audience. I can only imagine that they're going to let us know if it's a bad idea or a good idea.
Well, if
Maybe
you've
they'll
got
have
an
ideas of
idea
their own.
presented. We'll
Yeah.
get behind it, like it, or repost it.
And I know from you gentlemen both know, we all know police officers, the frontline police officers who are out there every day, and the stress level they deal with, because the amount of illegal guns that are on the street, smuggled from the States, that they're dealing with every day, and their life is in danger every day because of it. I can guarantee you they want a solution as much as anyone else living in any city in this country.
100%. Guns on the street changes policing entirely. We've witnessed it happen in Toronto. We've seen it across the country. Something does need to be done. I think we can at least all agree on that.
Hear, hear.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Patriotic means looking out for each other and fixing things together.
True patriotism is being in the country you love, surrounded by people you love, and great weather.
Being a patriot is being a part of your community and caring for it.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, patriotism is the one thing we all share.
It's okay to be critical of government and still be a patriot.
It's gratitude to your country.
Of course I'm a patriot. I'm Canadian. It's my home.
Well, actually, true patriot love is the mission.